Okay, so if you're trying to be found online, maybe you're running a big brand, maybe you're an expert in a really specific field, or just a creator who's passionate about something. We really need to talk about where attention actually is today, because let's be honest, the whole game of digital visibility, it's fundamentally changed.
It really has. We're definitely past the point where just uh, optimizing for Google was the only thing that mattered.
Right. And the sources we're looking at today, they point to this huge structural shift. It's not just about ranking on a page anymore. It feels like you're now part of this global AI-driven conversation.
That's exactly the core idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't just about like tweaking your old SEO playbook. It's really about acknowledging that large language models, the LLMs people use constantly, whether that's Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, or even the models behind other search tools, they are now absolutely central to how questions get asked and, more importantly, how authoritative answers get put together and delivered. These AIs are the new gatekeepers, in a way.
Okay, so our mission today is to really take a breath and unpack this huge shift. We're doing a deep dive into this concept the sources are calling owning the conversation. What does that actually mean? Why should you even care about this, instead of just chasing traffic volume like before? And maybe most importantly, what specific things do you need to start doing right now to make sure your expertise gets cited by AI, not just glanced at by a user for a second? Okay, let's unpack this. So the first big thing seems to be redefining the conversation itself. I mean, before, you were in the conversation, it usually meant you were like literally talking to people, right? Social media, comments, actual customer chats.
Yeah, and that's exactly where the old mindset can kind of trap you. The materials we looked at are super clear that the conversation is just way broader now. It covers basically every digital interaction, all the content you put out, every signal of credibility, your brand projects, especially when you think about how LLMs find and process information, visibility, trust, reputation. It's all built now through really well-structured, verifiable content that these machines can actually, trust.
So the AI isn't just like indexing your page. It's trying to weave your knowledge into its own understanding of a topic.
Precisely, yeah. When you pull together what the sources are saying, you can really define the conversation in this AI era using, let's say, three main pillars. Pillar one is the total set of answers given to users, specifically by these LLMs that are acting more and more like personal advisors for everyone. Your goal is to have your information be a core piece of that synthesized answer.
Okay, so the AI is basically mediating the connection between you and your audience. It's deciding which source is good enough, trustworthy enough to actually represent the answer.
And pillar two flows right out of that. It's the whole network of citations, references, and other signals that the LLMs rely on to generate those responses. This is kind of the new gold standard. If you're consistently getting cited in those authoritative AI answers, you're fundamentally and probably more durably part of this new digital conversation. It's like proof the ecosystem trusts your stuff.
Right, proof. And the third pillar, that sounds like it's more about scope, like the way you organize everything thematically and how comprehensively you cover your whole area of expertise. It's the sites that aren't just, surface level, but build out these really deep content hubs, answer all the tricky long tail edge case questions, and keep their references super up to date. That depth must signal reliability.
It absolutely does. So the goal of owning the conversation, it isn't really about getting the most clicks anymore. It's about becoming the definitive go-to source, like the single most complete, easiest to access, and most cited source of truth on whatever your subject is. You're essentially targeting both the human readers and the AI systems it's using them all at once. That makes sense. And that leads us straight into the next big point, the strategic shift needed. Because for ages, the mantra online was chase keywords, right? Find the popular search term, optimize a page for it, rinse, repeat. But the sources are really emphatic about this. Stop chasing keywords.
LLMs just aren't interested in how many times you stuffed a word onto a page. They want knowledge.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is what the LLMs do seem to reward instead. It's this idea of topical authority.
This means you really have to ditch that siloed approach to content. The whole one page per keyword thing, that's basically over. The focus has to be on creating content that shows you have real deep knowledge and accuracy across an entire subject area. Okay, so instead of one page for best running shoes, another for running shoe sizes, and a third for running shoe cushioning, you need more of a complete interconnected hub that tackles all those related questions, covers different user intents, gives all the context around, say, choosing and using running shoes. It's like building a whole digital neighborhood about running shoes, not just one isolated house.
That neighborhood analogy is perfect, actually, because the sources really stress structure and connection. Your content needs to be reliable, yeah, but also structured semantic linking, schema markup, and deeply interconnected. Your website, any custom AI tools you might build, your social stuff, even third-party mentions, it all needs to work together to present this single, coherent, trustworthy source. LLMs seem to recognize and reward sites that offer that kind of joined-up, comprehensive picture across every guide, every subtopic.
Okay, but I have to push back a bit here. For smaller businesses or, individual experts, building a whole digital neighborhood, that sounds really resource-intensive, exhausting even. Doesn't this kind of strategy just automatically favor the huge established players who already have tons of content?
That's a fair question, and it's critical. But what the sources suggest is that the payoff for doing this kind of meticulous work up front is actually huge in terms of durability and scalability. Think about it. If you spend money on, say, PPC ads, pay-per-click, you get these temporary spikes in visibility, right? But they vanish the second you turn off the budget. In contrast, the authority you build through this AI conversation approach. The sources describe it as durable, scalable, and something that actually multiplies its effect across different LLMs and AI platforms. It's more like investing in your knowledge infrastructure, not just renting attention for a week.
Huh. So the small, really focused expert could actually win by being deeper and more careful than a huge, maybe more superficial generalist site.
Absolutely. It seems like depth really beats sheer breadth in this new conversational era.
All right, let's get tactical then. Because strategy is great, but it only works if you can actually implement it. If owning the conversation is the target, what are the specific, actionable things the sources say you should be doing?
Well, they focus on two main content activities. First is creating those really authoritative multi-format content hubs we were just talking about. And this isn't just walls of text. It means well-written guides, sure, but also videos, detailed infographics, maybe integrated AI-powered FAQs. You've got to organize your knowledge so efficiently that a machine can easily understand and process it.
Okay, makes sense. And the second activity, the sources really highlighted developing custom AI assistants. That sounds like a pretty radical tactic. Can you break that down a bit more?
Yeah, this is where it gets quite clever, I think. It creates this kind of self-reinforcing authority loop. The sources talk about building custom AI assistants right there on your own website, ones that are specifically designed to answer complex questions within your specific domain. But here's the key part. These assistants must operate with public citations. They need to point back directly to your own authoritative content pages to validate the answers they give.
Wait, hang on. Let me get a concrete example. So am I basically training the big LLMs out there that my site is the ultimate source for this topic by using my own little AI?
That's pretty much it, yeah. Let's stick with your running shoe example. If a user asks your custom assistant something specific like, best shoe type for marathon training on trails, and your assistant gives the answer, but it publicly cites your detailed guide on trail marathon shoes as the source for that answer. Well, that answer, and crucially, its citation structure, becomes part of the web's overall conversational fabric. Other big LLMs that are constantly scanning the web, especially looking for these authority signals, then see that connection. They see your content being cited as authoritative by another AI. That seriously boosts the chance they'll reference your content in their own general answers later on.
Wow, okay. That is a clever feedback loop. You're literally injecting your authority into the wider digital conversation by building your own sort of micro LLM guide.
It's a very deliberate, active strategy. It goes way beyond just hoping Google indexes your page passively. And, this leads right into the next critical piece. How you have to start monitoring and optimizing your performance. It's not just about Google anymore. You basically need dual reporting now. You have to track how you're doing in classic web search results and how you're showing up in these LLM-powered AI search results.
So you can't just check your Google rank and call it a day. You need a whole new dashboard, basically, new KPIs.
Exactly. And the essential new activity, according to the sources, is running live experiments to actually measure which sites and which pages are being cited by the LLMs. This citation measurement, that's becoming the ultimate benchmark for whether you're winning in this conversation era. And this is tricky, right? Because these LLMs are often proprietary black boxes. Your standard web analytics aren't going to tell you how often ChatGPT used your text to generate an answer. So the sources really stress you have to actively prompt, query, test these external LLMs yourself, see if your carefully structured content is actually being picked as a source.
Yeah, and this is where some of the real-world examples cited in the materials we looked at, they get really surprising, actually.
What stood out most to you from that data?
Well, the thing that kept popping up was that these highly focused authoritative sites, sometimes sites with relatively few pages indexed by Google, they were getting referenced much, much more often by LLMs than these huge domains with millions of pages, but maybe thinner coverage on any one topic. It seems like size just isn't the main advantage anymore. It's depth and focus.
It completely flips that old internet wisdom on its head, doesn't it? That bigger is always better. It suggests that maybe LLMs really value the signal-to-noise ratio above almost everything else. A smaller, super precise domain is just less likely to have distracting, generic, or low-quality stuff mixed in. So for the AI trying to find the truth, your small, deep site might actually look like a safer, more reliable bet than some gigantic domain that's a mile wide and an inch deep.
Okay, so pulling this all together then, the main takeaway feels like any organization, really, regardless of how big they are or what their Google rank used to be, they can own their conversation. But it requires deliberately structuring content, really investing in that ongoing topical expansion and actively building those citation loops we talked about.
And that resilience you get, being less vulnerable to the winds of one specific algorithm change, that might be the biggest reward here. This whole practice of owning the conversation through meticulous coverage, really pushing for citations, staying engaged across platforms, it's not just another marketing tactic. It feels like it fundamentally redefines what success looks like in digital discovery now.
Why? What's the bottom line there?
Well, because these LLMs are increasingly the mediators for how the world discovers things, gets recommendations, makes decisions, if you're not successfully woven into that AI conversation, you risk becoming, well, effectively invisible when those important decisions are being made. You could have the absolute best product or service, but if the AI advisor people trust never mentions you, you lose out.
Right. Okay. So, thinking about this week, as you listen, you might be revisiting your own strategy. What does this all mean for you? Maybe we can leave you with a final thought to chew on. Given that the future of this conversation seems to hinge on provable citation, really solid structure, and verifiable accuracy,
What assumptions do you need to start questioning right now about your own content strategy, especially if it's still mostly focused on just achieving a high search ranking rather than being reliably referenced by the machines that are increasingly answering the world's questions? Think about that difference. Are you just trying to be on the list, or are you aiming to be the definitive answer?